Morning, everybody, and welcome to the Dominate Speaker Series. These are every first Wednesday of the month at 10 a.m., so I hope that you will join us every first Wednesday of the month at 10 a.m. Eastern. Our special guest today, we'd like to welcome back Marc Cunningham. Marc, it's always good to see you. Marc grew up in the real estate world and spent many years pulling weeds, painting walls, showing properties, and collecting rents for Grace Property Management, the company his father founded in 1978. Today, from a platform of managing over 900 rental properties with 20 team members, Grace Management helps people buy, sell, invest, flip, collect, rent, evict, and have fun doing all of that stuff. If you're more impressed with the initials after a name, Marc is the president of Grace Property Management and Real Estate, holds a degree in real estate and finance, has taught C classes in over 20 states, has been featured in multiple national real estate publications, holds multiple designations, and was named the 2018 National Property Manager of the Year by Think Realty. Marc lives in Loveland, Colorado, where he lives his failed childhood sports dreams through his children. So again, Marc, it's always good to see you. Today, you've got a really cool topic starting us off in 2021 and how to be the CEO of you. So I'm looking forward to your presentation. Welcome.
Thank you, Charlie. I appreciate being here. Happy New Year to you and to everybody that's joining us this morning. We continue on a little bit with the weirdness because we're still remote, right? We're not here in person, and looking forward to when we can get back to that. But thanks for having me on, and excited to be able to talk to you guys about this morning. And I think this topic we're talking about, I think is really timely just because it's the new year, right? And everybody to talk to. Hey,
you on in January. This was all by design, Marc. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, all right, excellent. I was talking to one of my agents the other day, and they said, I feel so kind of depressed because I feel like last year I had all of these plans and these goals, and I worked harder last year than I've ever worked. I worked harder than I've ever worked, but I feel like all I did is tread water. Here we are, we're in the new year, and I survived last year, but survival isn't really motivating. I didn't accomplish a whole lot of new stuff, and it's just kind of depressing. And so we had a conversation about that and landed on the point that, sometimes treading water is good enough, right? Compared to where we came from last year, because a lot of people were not able to tread the water to get to where we are. And people call it different things, right? They call it burnouts. They call it just being done with what they're doing. We all experience this type of thing. And so I was having a conversation not too long ago, and I think I mentioned this to you earlier, Charlie, with a buddy of mine who runs a super successful company, like uber successful. And I said, well, how's this year going for you? And he said, this year is like last year times 10. It's that much better. I said, wow, what did you do? How did you make it that much better? He said, well, I hired like a really high performing CEO for my company. And I was like, wow, that sounds amazing. Like you went and found this guy and hired a CEO. Yeah, I found this guy, I hired him, and he runs the company. He is the CEO of my company, and he's just turned it around. He's got me refocused. Like he's running this thing. And so I started asking him questions on that. At one point in time, I said, man, it sounds like I need to hire a CEO for my life. Like that would just be awesome if I could bring somebody in. Now, unfortunately, most of us, we don't have the means to hire a CEO for our lives because that just would be a little bit weird. But the good news is we all have a CEO for our lives, for ourselves. And the bad news is for some of us, it's that person you stared at in the mirror this morning. But they are your CEO for right or wrong. So I want to take a few minutes today and kind of talk about that idea of looking at your life through the same lens that we often look at our businesses through and kind of melding those two together. Because in the real estate world, boy, our lives and our businesses mesh like few other industries because we do business with people that we know, like, and trust, hopefully. And this is not a 9-to-5 job. We all know that. So these things do meld in together. And we want to look at some ideas on things that you can kind of look at from a business perspective, bring into your personal side, and see if that doesn't kind of propel you to an even more successful 2021, whatever that looks like for you. So as we go through this, I see, there's some chat folks there on the side. Feel free to jump in. I mean, if we were together, we'd keep this really conversational. So if you've got a comment, question, disagreements, tell me my hair looks bad, jump in the chat box and put that in there, and we'll make sure we hit those things as we're going. If you want to do the next slide there, please. So the quick history on me, as Charlie said, in 1978, my dad started a real estate and property management company, Grace Property Management, and I was employee number one because I was free child labor. So my dad had me do everything. I mean, there's not anything I can't remember doing, whether it was manual labor. And the rule in the summer, I worked for my dad's in the summer. The rule in the summertime was if it got to be over 100 degrees, I got to work in the office. Otherwise, I was outside mowing and doing all that stuff. So I grew up in that world. I studied finance. I studied real estate in college. Bought my first rental property the year I graduated college and kind of built up a portfolio. So I own a lot of rental real estate myself. I'm actually selling a lot of it right now, but built that up. So our company does real estate sales. We help investors. We help tenants. We help landlords. Our mantra is follow the opportunity. That's one thing we'll talk a little bit about today. Follow the opportunity. Where is the biggest opportunity in real estate today? And what can we do to capitalize on that opportunity? So flip to the next slide, please. And so if I hired you today as the president, as the CEO of You Incorporated, and we sat down tomorrow, would you have any clue what you should be doing as CEO? And I think that's a fair question because you are the CEO of You Incorporated. So what I want you to do for the next hour is put on your CEO hat. And I don't care if you are a successful agent. I don't care if this is day one. I don't care if you didn't sell anything last year or if you had the best year ever, or if you're the front desk person and you have no idea on how to sell. For the next hour, you are the CEO of You Inc. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask some questions of ourselves, of our CEO self, to make sure that You Incorporated is going to be moving in the right direction. So these are questions that real life CEOs ask of their companies and of themselves, and that we're going to ask of ourselves that way. Next slide, please. So the first question, we're going to kind of walk through the who, what, where, when, why. So who? This is the question. Who do you need to start spending more time with? Now, if we're in the business world, this is a very fair question to ask ourselves in the business world, right? Who should we spend more time with? And part of this is kind of like, who do we need to stop spending time with? Who are the time suckers in our businesses and in our lives that we just kind of dread spending time with? Because you know what high functioning CEOs do? One of the things they do is they make sure they surround themselves with people that are high functioning, that kind of pull them up, that energize them. It's not just a take like, oof, let me find somebody that I can suck the life out of, but it's finding those people that we really come away thinking, man, that was a really beneficial time for me and hopefully that other person. So if you're sitting there and you've got a pencil and paper in front of you, I would encourage you to pull that out and write these questions down. And this is something you can hopefully go back to and work through as you're putting your January, your February, your March plan in place. So this is one thing I did last year. I was challenged with this question. So what I did is I sat down, I pulled out a piece of paper, and yeah, I'm kind of old school, piece of paper, and I think it was actually even a pencil. And I wrote down people that if I had the opportunity, if I kind of had my magic wand, who would I want to have coffee with? Now it had to be realistic, right? I can't say, oh, I want to go meet the president and I want to meet whatever. It can't be in the sky. It's got to be realistic. But I thought, who are those people that could really help me move my business, that could really help me improve Marc? So for example, I thought, you know what? I was introduced a few months ago. I was at a NAR National Convention not too long ago, and I met the president of Colorado. NAR. I'm in Colorado right now, and it was just kind of an introduction, and we chatted for a few minutes. I thought, man, I would love, that's a high power guy. He's inspiring. I'd love to just spend some time with him. And so I dropped him an email, and I felt a little bit weird because I don't know the guy. And I was like, hey, we met and just enjoyed that conversation. If you're ever free, I'd love just to buy you a cup of coffee and just chat about the market out here in Colorado. And so he emailed me back. He was like, hey man, that'd be great. Forget coffee. How about lunch? How about I buy you lunch? I was like, oh, that sounds pretty good. So we got together for lunch, and man, it was a good time. We really hit it off. And we were talking, and he was giving me some suggestions, and I was giving him some suggestions. I came away from that lunch more inspired than I had been in weeks, months before that. Now, it didn't happen by itself. It happened because I took the initiative. I reached out to that person that I thought, man, this is somebody I really respect. So it's got to be a stretch, right? It's kind of a little bit of a stretch goal, but something that's potentially realistic to do. And so I made a list of 12 people. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to reach out and I'm going to try to meet with one of these people every month last year. It worked. I mean, other than we had to do some Zooms. And of course, I'm in Colorado. If you are caught in a restaurant in Colorado, they arrest you and throw you in jail. So we have to be careful on who we're meeting in person. But we were able to connect. I was able to make some amazing connections that helps my business. It helps keep me inspired. But that's one thing that I'm going to continue doing this year, continuing with some of those other relationships, as well as some new ones that we want to come in places. So that's a question that every CEO asks themselves. Who do I need to start spending more time with? All right, let's go on to the next question, the next slide, if we can. The next question is this. What parts of You Incorporated have you been neglecting? So let's go back to my friend that I told you hired the really high-powered CEO. One of the things this high-powered CEO did as he's talking to the business owner is he started listing the major parts of the business and ensuring that they aren't neglected. Because for all of us, we neglect some parts of our business. We do it by nature because we have certain things we really enjoy. Right? If you're a marketing person, like if you love marketing, then your marketing part of your business is awesome. But I would suspect to say the accounting part of your business may be a little bit lacking. Because if you love marketing, you probably hate accounting. And you either have to go hire an accounting person, but you have to make sure it's taken care of. And we get that in our businesses, don't we? We get the idea that, hey, I've got to pay attention to marketing. I've got to pay attention to accounting. I've got to pay attention to personnel and to HR and to all those little parts of the business. But the question we have to ask ourselves on the next slide is, what are the necessary elements of a successful life? Okay, we know the successful elements of business, marketing, finance, all those types of things. Next slide, please. What are the necessary elements of You Incorporated? Because we don't have to necessarily pay attention to the same business things, but there are parts. So let's walk through quickly what I think are kind of the 5 necessary elements of You Incorporating. Just like we've got finance and marketing and personnel and accounting and taxes and all that, what about You Incorporated? So let's walk through these. Next slide. So the first one, number 1, is the faith element. Right? And by faith, we simply mean kind of that higher purpose, right? What really motivates and inspires you? And we all had to dig deep on this one in 2020, because there were days, if you're like me, boy, there were days that I just wanted to throw in the towel and be done with it. You know, you throw all this junk going on, and then you have some employee or agent who's kind of complaining about this. And then yesterday morning, I opened my email. I'm all excited for 2021. The very first email I see is from my state real estate commission. And it said, hey, congratulations, you've been selected for an annual random audit. Here are 17 pages of information for you to fill out, return to us with every piece of information. I was like, oh, come on. Like, really? This is how I'm supposed to start my 2021? But it's at times like that, right, where we've kind of got to say, hey, what keeps us motivated? And whatever it is, we've got to make sure we hold on to that. One thing I like to do is read business biographies. It's kind of an inspiring things to do. And what I find, almost every business biography I've read, at the very back of the book, there'll be this chapter, and the person, however successful they were, they'll reflect on this element, right? Like the faith element. The idea that, you know what, I did really well in business, I made a lot of money, but I kind of neglected the faith element of my life for too long. Let me show you one on the next slide here. I just finished reading recently this book by, it was an autobiography of J.C. Penney. Fascinating guy. If you've never read this, you should pick it up. And he had this quote, just like all the other ones. In the back of his book, he had a chapter on like what motivated him. And he said, you know what, this diagnosis is timeless. People who are spiritually sick can never be well in other areas. Because we know that if we neglect a particular area of You Incorporated, it bleeds over into these other areas. So that's number 1, that's the faith element. Next slide, please. Number 2 is the family element. And by family, we simply mean your relationships with people close to you, right? The relational side of things. And for a lot of us in the business world, this suffers a little bit. And this has been terrible, especially during COVID, because we've been locked away from people. We had a Zoom meeting with our team the other day, and I said, guys, I can't wait for all this to get back in the office where we can actually see each other. I said, because when we get isolated, the problem is we get weird. People get weird when they're isolated. And then we see each other on Zoom and we're like, man, that dude has gotten weird. And then he looks at me and says, man, Mark has gotten really weird. And we do. When we get isolated, we get weird. So we need to have those relationships. But this is pre-COVID. But if you can pull up the next slide, please. Have you ever seen or heard of this woman? The UK, this is pre-COVID now. They hired this woman. They created a new government post because they realized that the business community was suffering because of isolation. People were not connecting from a business standpoint, from a personal standpoint, and it was creating problems in their society. So they created a new government position. And this government position, next slide, please, is filled by Tracy Crouch, and it is actually called, she is the Minister for Loneliness. It's a government position in the UK. It sounds like something out of a Harry Potter book, I think, to me. The Minister for Loneliness. How would you like that to be your position? But her whole goal The whole reason they created this government post is because they know, hey, people are getting isolated and it's not good for society. We've got to get back to that. All right, next slide. The next of our F's, we've got faith, we've got family. Number 3 is fitness. And by fitness, we simply mean physical health. And we could, I always feel goofy saying this because we all know we've got to take care of our health and we've got to pay attention to that. But boy, you want to sabotage You Incorporated, just stop paying attention to your health. And that comes down to 3 things real quickly on the next slide, which is really what we're eating, right? How much we're sleeping and how much we're exercising. I was talking to a buddy of mine yesterday and we were talking about the new year. And he's like, I drank too much and I'm going dry January. Is anybody doing dry? If you're doing dry January, type it in the comments so we can you can inspire somebody. I thought about dry January and I thought that didn't sound too fun. So I'm not doing dry January. But I was doing a CE class not too terribly long ago. And for the sponsor for the class, they had a doctor come up. This doctor comes up and I thought, this is weird. Why are you having a doctor for a real estate CE class? And he says, hey guys, I want to talk to you for a few minutes about your health. We all kind of rolled our eyes. And, come on. And he said, you know what? I do a lot of meeting with folks. And he said, here's the one question I ask of my clients. The one question I say, tell me how you're sleeping. Tell me how you're sleeping. Because if you are sleeping well, I can pretty well gauge that your health is strong. If you're not sleeping well, you've got issues whether you know it or not. So we talked about the sleep patterns for just a few minutes. It was fascinating. It's fascinating stuff. But this idea of our physical health, our physical fitness, this is part of You Incorporated. So Kristen's doing dry weeknights. I like that, Kristen. But every weeknight, Kristen, because that's a little bit too much. Richard's doing a dry decade. Yikes, Richard. You are a powerful man. You inspire me, but not that much. All right, next one. Next slide, please. We've got faith, family, fitness. Number 4 is finances. By finances, we simply mean your income and expenses for You Incorporated. So one exercise that we do in our company and in our personal lives on somewhat of a regular business is we go through 3 specific questions we ask ourselves on the financial side. Now we do this in our personal life and we do this in our business life. And we just did this a few weeks ago on our business side of things. And it's 3 exercises. Exercise number 1 is we say we're going to plug the holes in the boat. Plug the holes in the boat. And we look for expenses that are going out the hole in the boat that just shouldn't be there. So for example, I printed out our credit card bill for our company, and I started going through line by line by line. And I started asking my accounting person what these things were for. And I found that on a couple instances, we had double subscribed to some software packages. So every month we were paying twice. Because why? Because we subscribed once, we forgot about it, we resubscribed. I was like, why is this here? Why are we paying for Zoom twice? Oh, well, we doubled up and okay, well, let's get that canceled, please. And I pulled out our cell phone bill for our company. And I'm looking through our cell phone bill and I was like, hey, whose phone numbers are these? Like, why are we paying for these phone numbers? My person was like, you know what? I have no idea. I think we used to use those numbers and we just never got around to canceling them. So we've been paying $35 for these 4 different accounts every month for the last year. Well, why don't we cancel those things? And so we found that we had a lot of that stuff. There were a lot of holes in the boat, simple wastes of money every single month going out that we needed to plug. So that was step number 1. We plugged the holes in the boat. Then step number 2 is we go through the exercise where we say, okay, let's make sure we're not leaving any money on the table. We don't want to leave any money on the table. And by that, what we mean is where are areas that income's supposed to be coming in that maybe we're just messing up on. Our process is broken down. We need to audit our income to make sure we got all the income we were supposed to be getting. Now, on the real estate sales side, this is a little bit simpler because if you forget to collect your commission check, you're going to remember it pretty quickly. But there are other income streams as well that we want to make sure we're paying attention to. So we went through, for example, in our company, we audited all of the income we were supposed to be collecting. On the property management side, we looked at like leasing fees and maintenance income. And we found that there were things that we were supposed to be charging that we just didn't charge. And I was like, as the business owner, it's like nails on a chalkboard when we see those things. So we got those things in. So we plugged the holes in the boat. We made sure we did not leave any money on the table. And then exercise number 3 is we're going to find some new streams of income. Find some new streams of income. And I want to take a couple minutes on this because I think this is important for all of us on the business side, on the personal side, and in the real estate world. We have a great opportunity to do this. Now, I think the easiest way to find new income streams is to think of this concept, which is called ancillary business services. If you want to go to the next slide, please. Ancillary business services. In the business world, this concept, this term is thrown around quite a bit. An ancillary business service definitionally is simply an additional service offering that augments or adds to your primary service. So our primary service in real estate sales is what? Real estate sales. That's the income we get. So are there other opportunities for add-on services that can come behind the real estate and add on little things? Other industries get this really well. Other industries do this well. The real estate sales industry, we just don't do this very well. So let's step outside the real estate sales industry. Let's look at a couple other industries, and let me give you some examples just to get your mind turning. So pull up the next slide, please. So when I used to travel quite a bit, I fly Southwest a lot. I do. I fly Southwest a lot. Southwest is awesome at ancillary business services. I was flying a Southwest flight a while back, and I'm reading an article in the Wall Street Journal about Southwest magazine, or about Southwest airline, as I'm flying on Southwest. And the article said this. It said, Southwest, typically, when they sell a ticket for their airline, typically they lose money on that airline ticket. I thought, well, that's weird. How can they stay in business? Because I know they're a profitable airline. And it went on to say, they lose money on the sale of the ticket, but they more than make up for that loss through, of course, ancillary business services. And it makes sense because when I fly Southwest, I go online, I go on southwest.com, I book my flight, and then it comes time to pay. And when I pay, I pull out my Southwest credit card and I pay on my Southwest credit card. Now, does Southwest get a piece of that transaction because I'm paying with a Southwest credit card? Yeah, they absolutely do. Now, Southwest is not in the credit card business, but they've partnered with the credit card company, so they get a little piece. And then right before I click buy, I get a little pop-up and it says, hey, do you need to rent a car? And oftentimes I do need to rent a car when I travel. And so I can go through and I'll rent a car from wherever I rent the car from. And let me ask you this. Does Southwest get a little piece of that transaction from me renting a car through Avis or Budget or whoever? Yeah, they do. Southwest gets a piece of that transaction. Now, Southwest is not in the car rental business, but it's an ancillary business service. And then right before I click buy, I get another pop-up and it says, hey, you need to get a hotel? Look at all the hotels you can reserve here. And they're not owned by Southwest. But if I rent or reserve a hotel there, Southwest gets a piece of that transaction. They do it so well. And then when I get back on the flight to fly home and I don't do my dry January and I don't do my dry evening and I do my very wet afternoon and I order a glass of wine, they just made some money on Mark there because Southwest gets it. They've got to have it. Southwest. Let me give you one other example of a different industry. Go to the next slide, please. I was getting gas in my car the other day. And I took a picture because gas stations do an amazing job of this. Did you know that when you go pump gas in your car, if you only get gas, the gas station typically doesn't make a penny. They sell the gas for what they pay for it. They don't make any money on a gallon of gas. They don't. You know where they make their money? They make their money on the additional things that they sell. So when you walk in the little convenience store and it's perfectly well lit and they've got like the great smelling donuts right there and the breakfast burritos and the Slurpees and slushies and candy bars and the hot dogs and all that stuff, that's where they make a killing. So I took a picture of this. I was getting gas in my car the other day and I was looking around at the convenience store, and I don't know how well you can see this, but they had their advertisements for power drinks and cigarettes and oil for the car. And see right next to the gas station there, they have the wood for sale. Now, go to the next slide. I don't know if you can see that real well, but what do you think the profit margin is on a bundle of firewood for $3.89? That's a pretty high profit margin. No profit margin on a gallon of gas, but a lot of profit margin. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Mark, why are they putting the wood next to the gas pump? And it's Colorado. We're a little backwoodsy. Give us a break. Give us a break. But that's where they make their money. They make their money on those types of ancillary services. And this is what we have to do in our business. Let me give you one more out of our business example. Next slide, please. This is a picture of my son. So I've got 2 boys and 2 girls. And last year, my son, Gabriel, comes to me. He goes, hey, Dad, let's buy a trampoline. I want to buy a trampoline, Dad. And so I was like, hey, that's a great idea. So like any good capitalist father, I was like, well, how are you going to pay for it? And he's like, Dad, like I'm 7 years old. How am I supposed to pay for a trampoline? And I was like, well, what can we do? Hey, we have a mower in the garage, right? He's like, yeah. I was like, I bet you could mow some neighbors' lawns and they would pay you. He's like, really? We can do that? I was like, yeah, we can do that. He's like, all right. So he gets all excited. So he makes up little flyers, Gabriel's Lawn Service. And so we go around door to door and he's knocking on the doors. And he's like, it was such a great learning experience. I'd be like, okay, look them in the eyes, shake their hand, back when we could touch, right? Shake their hand, and he'd be like, hi, I'm Gabriel, and I'm mowing lawns. I'm just wondering if you want me to mow your lawn. And it was so cute. The first guy's like, yeah, I don't think so. Thanks. Close the door. My son just breaks into tears. He's like, oh, Daddy said no. I was like, you got to push through the no to get to the yes, son. Great marketing lesson. So anyway, he gets like 10 lawns now. So he's mowing 10 lawns. So every Saturday we get up, we load the mower in the truck, we drive around the neighborhood. He pushes the mower, I do the weed eater, and we're mowing every Saturday, all summer long. About halfway through the summer, he goes, hey, Dad, I'm making a lot of money. And I was like, yeah, you are making a lot of money. And he looks at me and he says, Dad, let's mow more. And I was like, oh, Gabriel, I can't, like, Dad's exhausted. Like, I'm spending my entire Saturday helping you mow, which I'm not the biggest fan of. Like, I can't, like, Dad's shot. I can't mow more. He goes, Dad, I want to make some more money though. So I said, okay, well, let me ask you this. Gabriel. Do you think that those clients who we're mowing for, those 10 people, we're already mowing for 10 people, we're already at their house. Do you think there's anything that maybe they would want you to do for them while you're there that maybe they would pay you money for? I may have even said an ancillary business service or two. And so let me ask you, okay? You are Gabriel's business advisor. You're his business advisor right now. So if you're live on this participating, I want you to type something into the chat. So get your fingers nimble here, okay? Give me some examples of some other services that Gabriel could provide to these clients while he's already there mowing that they may potentially pay him for. Just anything, whatever pops into your head. If something pops into your head, type that into the chat. Let me see what kind of a business advisory group we have here. What are some ancillary services that Gabriel could provide to his lawn mowing clients as he's out there? Because Gabriel and I had this conversation. I said, Gabriel, what could you do? He's like, well, I guess I could pull some weeds. I was like, yeah, that's a good one. You could pull some weeds. What else could you do? He's like, well, we could, right now we're picking up dog poop in that one guy's yard. We really shouldn't be doing that. I guess we could charge fast. Yeah, we could do that. And I see a couple things popping up, right? Flowering the water beds, watering the plants, weed the flower bed. Yeah, absolutely. Dog walking, mulch, yeah, a lot of mulching. Walking the dog, collecting trash, start recycling. Yes, it is Colorado. We do a lot of recycling here. A lot of trash pickup, pick up the poop, pet waste. And that's the first thing we did. So here's the first thing we did. We called, or we texted our clients who had a dog, and there was like dog poop all over the yard every time. We said, hey, we're happy to mow for you, but you know what? Like, our mowing services don't really include poop pickup. Now, we're happy to keep picking up the poop if you want us to, but it's going to be an extra $5. Otherwise, would you please pick up the poop before we come? Well, guess what he said? He's like, yes, here's your extra $5. Keep picking up my dog poop. By the way, if you want a humble experience, pick up the dog poop out of your neighbor's yard before you mow it. Very humbling, but anyway, I digress. So we started doing that. We made an extra $5. Now, we weren't doing anything different. All we did is kind of redefine our scope of services. See, some of us in the business world, we find ourselves picking up way too much dog poop and not getting paid for it. And yes, that, my friends, is an amazing analogy. That's just a free one right there. Poop is worth $15, says Jocelyn. You know what, Jocelyn? I think it's worth 25. I was way too cheap to be picking up poop for $5. But for my son and his trampoline, we got it done. So we did that. And so suddenly he's making like twice as much money just by doing these ancillary services. And we've got to pay attention to this. Here's how this impacts us. We are in the real estate world, ladies and gentlemen. I think we have more opportunities for ancillary business services than in any industry at any point in time. I really do. I really believe that. Now, if you're selling real estate, you can piggyback onto that through additional, they're very commonly referred to now as like side hustles, right? That type of stuff. If you've been doing real estate sales and you're pretty good at it, you know what I would encourage you to do? Find someone who you can not just mentor, not just like, hey, I'll give you some advice, but how about some coaching? How about some writing to people that really need help on how to do this? And guess what? You get paid for that. There are companies that will pay you. There are people that will pay you to do that type of stuff. Copywriting, blogging, that's just one little avenue of that. But that is how you're going to really find these new income streams. Okay, let's keep moving here. So we've got next slide, please. We've got faith, family, fitness, finance, and then the last of our 5 there is fun, your time. Right? This is a necessary element. That's what we're looking at here. A necessary element of you incorporated. For most of us, this is the one we neglect because we want to build a business. We need to take care of our families. We need to do all the things we're doing. But when is the last time you did something for you? If you had a day to do nothing, what would you do? When was the last day you had? to do nothing. Or heck, the last 2 hours you had to do nothing. And it doesn't need to be some grand thing. It can just be like, you know what? I want to get in my car and go to Starbucks and just sit in the parking lot and read a book, take a nap. I mean, I live in Loveland, Colorado. We're like right at the base of the Rocky Mountains. And if I get in my car, I drive up this canyon just like 10 minutes outside of town. And in 30 minutes, I'm in Estes Park. It's a beautiful drive up the canyon, Estes Park. It's beautiful. What I always want to do is just go up there for lunch by myself. Get in the car, drive up the canyon, sit by the creek in Estes and have lunch. Now, last year, I think I did it once. That's pathetic. That's something that I'm going to try to do more because it's like Marc time. It's fun time. And we all need to have that. You Incorporated needs to make sure that you're doing something periodically for you to keep that motivation up. And then the last one, next slide, please, is our vocation. This is you Incorporated. Now, this ties definitely into our job, right? We're not calling it our job JOB because hopefully it's more than that. Hopefully it's what you're really passionate about doing. But you Incorporated has 6 essential elements: faith, family, fitness, finance, fun, and vocation, what you do. To the extent you're paying attention to these things and making sure you're focusing on these things, you Incorporated will be successful. To the extent you ignore any 1, 2, 3 things within this group or overemphasize any 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these things, you Incorporated is just going to collapse on itself. It has to have attention paid to every single one of these. And as we talk about vocation, real briefly, if we can pull up the next slide, please, your vocation is the intersection of 3 things. It's the intersection, number 1, of what are you passionate about? Like, what do you really enjoy? Not to say you wake up every day and you're like, oh, I just love real estate. I want to sell it. For some of us, that's us. But you've got to have an element of passion, number 1. Number 2, you've got to have an element of talent. You've got to be kind of good at it. If you stink at it, that's not good. And number 3, you got to be able to make some money at it. And where these 3 things intersect, that's your vocation. Now, hopefully for most of us, it is real estate. If it's not, well, then you need to think about that. And when we only hit 2 to 3, that's not our vocation. So for example, I'm a basketball player. I like basketball. Now, you can't tell I'm tall. I'm like 6'5". Yeah, I'm a tall guy. I bet I could beat almost every one of you in basketball. Maybe not Steve. He looks to be in amazing shape. But I could beat the rest of you. I could beat you in a game of basketball because I'm pretty good at it. I'm pretty talented. I'm very passionate about it. I love basketball. I can play all day long. However, no one's going to pay me a penny to play basketball. So it can't be my vocation. Just can't be, because those 3 things don't intersect. I've got a buddy who's a dentist. I was having breakfast with him not too long ago. And he's a very successful dentist. And he's got the talent, very, very successful. He makes a ton of money, makes a lot of money doing dentistry. But you know what he said to me? He goes, Marc, you know what? I hate my job. I hate it. Got into it because my dad did it. My dad was a dentist, and now I'm a dentist, and I'm like locked in, hate what I do. Well, you know what? That's not his vocation. It may be his job for the rest of his life, but it's not his vocation because he's got no passion for the thing. So for all of us, we need to find those 3 things as they intersect, and that becomes a necessary element of you Incorporated. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Next slide, please. So we're looking at our questions. So here's the next question we need to ask ourselves as the CEO of you Incorporated, and that is this: what do you need to stop doing? What do you need to stop doing? Now, if I asked you what you needed to start doing or what your New Year's resolution was, anybody would have a lot of things that they want to add, right? Oh, I want to do this. I asked my wife just the other night. I said, hey, so what do you want to do in 2021? And she had this laundry list of like 7 new things she wanted to start. And we all do that. But the more important question, I think, are what are the things that you need to stop doing in your business and in your personal life that are going to propel you on? And here's what I don't mean. Here's the challenge. Don't just find the bad things. Don't be like, oh gosh, I need to stop drinking every night. And by the way, I don't know why I keep going back to drinking, guys. I'm not that much into drinking, but kind of sounds like maybe I am. I don't know it. But what are the things that just aren't the best use of your time? Because for every one of us, we have things, projects, things that we've been doing this last year that just aren't the best use of our time, that we have to stop doing. You can't take on a new project until you turn the old projects off. So one thing we do in our business, remember, because we're talking about business and personal together, we're meshing these together. So every year, one thing that I do in my business and personal life is I find some things that just aren't the best use of my time, and I'm going to stop doing them. And these are good things. Like they're not bad things. They're good things, but they're not the best use of my time. So for example, I do a fair amount of like one-on-one business coaching. do a fair amount of that, and it works pretty well. It works very well for me. But I said, you know what? I'm going to pare that way back this year. Now, it's a good thing. I like it. I'm good at it. It works well. But you know what? I want to focus on some new things, and it's becoming a little bit difficult. Kim says she's going to stop social media surfing. Oh my gosh, that is good for you, Kim. Isn't that terrible? How much time we spend on that? That's a hard thing. That's one of the things that can be good, right? Because like, oh, I'm marketing myself. Yeah, maybe you are, maybe you aren't. Now, if you are a people pleaser, this is going to be really hard, because what you need to start doing, if you pull the next slide, please, start saying no. Start saying no. And gosh, if you're a people pleaser, you don't even know what I'm talking about right now, because you can't say no to anything. It doesn't matter what the quote unquote opportunity is, you're going to say yes, because you don't want to offend the person. And here's your problem. You look at it as like an opportunity. So I was talking to one of my VPs in our office the other day. I said, hey, what's going on today? He goes, oh, I've got a full schedule. I've got like meetings all day. I said, oh, really? Who are you meeting with? He goes, well, first I've got to go meet with this title rep who's just been like, they've been trying to get together for lunch with me for the longest time. And so I'm going to meet with this title rep. Then I've got an insurance company that just like, they want to make a connection with us and really help us out and get that done. And I said, okay, well, hold on. Like, are these people that are going to like are we getting anything from this? Or is this just purely like, they want to hitch their wagon to, or they want to hitch their whatever to our wagon? He's like, nah, I've been dreading this for the longest time. And I said, because I know he does this a lot. I said, you do this quite a bit, don't you? He's like, yeah, I'm always meeting with these people because you want to make connections. And so I said, listen. As you become more and more successful, because he's pretty successful, I said, you got to start saying no more and more often. He's like, no. And then he kind of waded into what somebody just said there. How do you pronounce that word? It's pronounced N-O, no. And so let me give you, if you have a camera and you're watching this online, you may want to take a screenshot of this. Go up to the next slide, please. This is a template I have on my email. It's saved under it's called no. That's the template. It's a Word doc, and it's my no thank you template. So when I get an email, like I got just the other day, and it said this, hey, Mark, because so me, Mark, I do like some video educational stuff, right? And I send this out on different things. So I got an email the other day. It said, hey, Mark, I watch your video things. I really enjoy that. I'm going to happen to be in Denver next week, Mark, and I would love to sit down and buy you a cup of coffee and just pick your brain and have a conversation. Can I buy you a cup of coffee? Now, what do you say? I mean, to some extent, you're like, oh, that could be a good opportunity. I could meet a new person. I mean, I don't know. My rule for me is to default to no. Unless I'm like crazy about doing it, I'm going to default to no, because I need to say no. So I opened up my no thank you template and I copied and pasted this, and this is what it said. Hey, thanks for reaching out and thinking of me. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity. I'm currently a little overcommitted, so I must respectfully decline, but thanks again, and let's stay in touch. Now, that's not an offensive email, right? Nobody's going to get offended by me saying that, and it's true. I'm trying to say no to more things. So every single one of you needs to have a no template on your computer. And the next time that opportunity, put that word in air quotes, comes up for something to do, you need to say no. Okay? I've given you permission to say no. Let me share with you Warren Buffett, one of his famous quotes. And he says, listen to this. If you fell asleep with your neighbor, hopefully you didn't fall asleep with your neighbor, nudge your neighbor, wake them up, because you need to hear this. Warren Buffett says this: the difference between a successful person and a really successful person is that the really successful person says no to almost everything. Did you get that? The difference between a successful and really successful person is the really successful person says no to almost everything. So the more successful you get, the more things you need to say no to. Now, if today's day one, you just got your real estate license and you got nothing, then don't say no to anything, right? Follow every opportunity. But the more successful you get, the more you have to follow those. And let me give you one other way to think about this as it relates to what you should be spending your time on and what you should be saying no to. So go to the next slide, please. If you have a calculator in front of you, here's what I would encourage you to do right now. Type into your calculator how much money you made last year. What was your annual income last year? Just whatever it was. And then I want you to divide that number by 2,080. And take us to the next slide, please. Because here's what that will give you. Let's pretend you made $100,000 last year. Good job. You made 100 grand. Divided by 2,080, that comes out to 48. That is your hourly rate. That is how much you earned based upon a 40-hour work week. And I know you're saying, Mark, I didn't work 40 hours. I worked 70 hours a week, which is even worse. It means your hourly rate was less than that. But let's pretend that you worked a 40-hour work week and you made 100 grand. That means you are earning, as CEO of your life, you are earning $48 per hour. Okay? Why is that important to know? Because what we should know from that is we should do nothing. Nothing. Shake your head no with me. I can't see you doing it, but I believe you are. We should do nothing that generates less than $48 per hour because it's a bad use of our time. So if you have an opportunity for something that doesn't generate $48 that hour, you need to say no to it. Why? Because your time is worth $48 an hour. You are paying you to get, let me get real psychedelic here. You are paying you $48 an hour. Think about that. I know some of you, it'll come to you in 5 minutes, right? You're paying yourself as CEO, you are paying yourself as an employee of You Incorporated $48 to do your job. I don't want my people doing things that are below their pay grade. So for example, I was talking to my VP in the office the other day. And she came walking by my office and she was grabbing her coat. I was like, oh, you go to lunch? What are you doing? She's like, oh no, we ran out of paper for the printer. I'm going to run up to the office supply store. Okay, that's fair. How many of us, like if we were in person, say raise your hand if you've ever had to run to the office supply store to pick up paper, pens, whatever you ran out of. And so I said, she knew it was coming. I go, hey Jessica, can I ask you a question? It's like, yeah, what? I go, how much do I pay you again? How much do you get paid? And she knew right where I was going because I do this. And so she kind of shakes her head, and I pay her a lot. She makes a lot of money, and she's like, I don't know, let me make up a number. 100 grand. You pay me 100 grand. I was like, yeah. Wow. So I'm just trying to figure out, Jessica, if I want to pay you $48 to drive to the office supply store and buy a ream of paper, or if maybe we should have our office front desk person do that, or maybe we should order it on Amazon. Because I don't know if I want to pay you for it. And I was joking with her, and you guys are thinking I'm really mean, but gosh, I don't want to pay her $48 an hour, and you don't want to pay you $48 an hour or whatever it is to do goofy stuff. Okay, next slide. Thank you, Kim. I appreciate that. Kim loves this slide. You're right, Kim. That is good. If we were all together, somebody should say amen or something. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Next question is where? Where are the best opportunities? Where should we be looking for opportunities? Now, you may be looking at this slide and say, well, hold on, Mark, hold on. You just told me I should be saying no to all these things, but now we're saying that like we should be looking for opportunities. So like, which one is it? Am I saying no to everything, or am I paying attention to opportunities? That's a fair question. That's a fair question. But let's remember, I'm talking to you as the CEO of You Incorporated right now, right? That means as CEO, we don't run to the office supply store to pick up paper. It means we can't, if we're going to be successful, we can't have our heads down all the time, focused on the daily grind work. Now that work has to get done. It does have to get done. I totally get that. But if we have our heads down all the time, focused on what's just in front of us today, we will miss unexpected opportunities that come up in front of us. I recently read a book by, what's the guy's name? Reed Hastings. Reed Hastings is the CEO of Netflix. I mean, Netflix, obviously uber successful, right? And he had this quote in there. He's talking to CEOs, and he said this. He said, hey, CEOs, if you find yourself being busy, you know what? You are doing a bad job as CEO. And you think, well, now hold on. Like, of course I'm busy. If I ask any of you, are you busy? You'd probably be like, yeah, I'm busy. But Reed would say, you know what? Then you're doing a bad job. Because one of your obligations as CEO, Reed would say, is to make sure you're not busy so that you can pay attention to unexpected opportunities as they come up. See, we don't know when they're going to come up. We just don't know. But if you got your head down and you're focused on the junk all the time, you will miss unexpected opportunities. You just will. So you have to start paying attention to those unexpected opportunities. And it's hard. It almost takes discipline. It takes discipline to have excess time, because for most of us, we're going to feel guilty. Like if we have nothing to do for half an hour, then what do? Well, either we go to social media, which we already know that's a bad waste of our time, says Kim, or we're going to just waste our time, right? Do something goofy. That is a bad use of our time. So for example, as we hit last March, I mean, I try to be really proactive with this. I try to be really intentional about making sure I'm not busy. Like I have days that I carve out of my schedule with nothing on them because I want to be able to have my head up, paying attention to opportunities. So let's go back in time. If you could get in me with a time machine and we could go back to the end of March. One morning I got up in March, I had nothing on my calendar. I'm reading the paper and I see, because we've all heard this, if we take back to the end of March, like this is when the stock market, remember, just like collapsed on itself. And I'm reading these articles and I'm thinking, man, like, are things this bad? Is it true? This is what I thought, because it said the price of Marriott stock had fallen by 2/3. 2/3. It had gone from like 100 to 33. And I thought to myself, gosh, I can't believe that the Marriott company is worth 1/3 of what it was 30 days ago. That doesn't sound right to me. It just doesn't make sense. And so I started reading other stuff, and it wasn't just Marriott. There were all sorts of companies that were just ridiculous. Now, I'm a real estate guy. I'm not a stock guy. But you know what? I thought, I wonder if this is an opportunity that I should look into. And so I did a little bit. I just did a little bit of studying, and it wasn't difficult. But I took some money and I threw it in the stock market. Can I brag to you guys for a minute? I know I can't help it. I just gotta tell you this. So a couple nights ago, I'm sitting down with a glass of wine, again, the wine, with my wife. I said, hey, honey, you want to know something amazing? You want to know something crazy? We made more money this year in the stock market than I made in the real estate business. Now that blew me, because I'm not a stock guy. But you know what? Fortunately, I had the time set aside to pay attention to opportunities, and I just threw some money in there, and it did pretty well. And at the end of the year, that was an opportunity I am so glad I followed. Now, we don't know when those opportunities are going to come up, but we've got to be paying attention to those opportunities. Now, if you're kind of struggling with this and you're like, yeah, but I still, I'm a people pleaser. I want to say yes. And then I find myself overloaded. Let me give you one more way of measuring yourself on what to say yes to. And this is a conversation I had with a guy not too long ago. I said, hey, how do you decide? This is a real successful guy. How do you decide what to say yes to? And he goes, oh, Mark, that's easy. And flip to the next slide, please. He said, you know what? If it's not a hell yes, it's no. I was like, that sounds cool, but what in the world does that mean? And he goes, well, Mark, think about it this way. When someone calls me up and says, hey, do you want to do lunch? Or, hey, I've got an opportunity to look at this property for sale. Or do you want to represent this buyer? They want to buy a $5,000 condo and look at 25 places. Like, all these opportunities, we're presented with opportunities every day. He said, my filter is simply this. I default to no, unless it's hell yeah. Now I know it's a little bit gruff. It's a little bit rough around the edges. Just bear with me on the language there. But you get the point, right? We all have those opportunities where we're just kind of like, I don't know. What should I do? And for too many of us, we default to, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And we need to stop doing that. We need to default to no, unless it's a hell yeah, I want to do that. So for example, if I emailed you when this presentation's over and I was like, hey, Kim, I loved your comments there. You know what, Kim? I want to give you a present. I've got a condo in Vail and I'm not using it next week. You want it? You know what? I'll fly out to Colorado. You can go up to Vail, stay in my condo. I don't have a condo in Vail, by the way. But if I did, like, Kim's going to be like, hell yeah, I'm taking Mark's free condo in Vail. I'm doing it, right? So that you go for, okay? If I said, oh, hey, by the way, Kim, you want to come with me and I'm going to go visit my mother-in-law and their family, by the way, up in Vail at the same time. Like, oh, no, that's a no. Right? The mother-in-law, I just spent a week with my mother-in-law. That's going to be a no. We all have this. So start saying no until you get to the hell yes. When you get to the yes, that's what you say yes to, and everything else needs to be no. That'll just give you a little bit of a measuring stick. So if you're a people pleaser, this is going to be extra hard for you. You got to gear it up because you say yes to everything, but you've got to stop. Why? Because that's not what successful CEOs do. You've got to say no. Okay. Someone in the group there says, will wine be involved? Listen, when I spend a week at my in-laws' family and they're dry, there was no wine involved, which made it that much more difficult. But I made up for it when I came home. My wife's family's in Iowa, and I love my wife's family, but it's Iowa in the middle of winter, so you should have some sympathy on me, guys, for that. Okay, next slide. I'm digressing. Too much talking about wine and in-laws. Okay, our next question. When will you start taking Fridays off? When will you start taking Fridays off? Now, it doesn't have to be Friday, but my suspicion, if I sat down with any of you and I asked you, hey, why did you get into the real estate sales business? Like, why? One of the things you would probably say at some point in time is, you know what? I wanted to set my own schedule. I wanted some flexibility. I wanted some freedom. Can you resonate with that? If so, shake your head. Yes. Okay. How's that working out for you so far? Do you have a lot of flexibility? Do you have a lot of freedom? Because in this business, it's like smoke and mirrors. The real estate sales business promises flexibility and freedom and sets your own schedule. And then you start doing it and you're like, I have no freedom. I'm at the whim of my clients. I have no flexibility. This is ridiculous. I mean, I'm going to go back to the 9 to 5. At least I could be done at 5 o'clock, but we can't do that oftentimes now. So one thing that we want to do is schedule time to be done. If you say, Mark, this is ridiculous, there's no way I could take Fridays off. And maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. But let me ask you this. Could you take a half day on Friday periodically? You know you want to, but it's not going to happen by itself. And if you can't do it now, what makes you think you're going to be able to do it when things get busier later this year? Because you're all saying, well, you know what, that's a great goal for the future. Can't do it now, but in the future, I'll do it. I got news for you. Your future is only going to get busier. So you need to start it now, because as you get busier, this is going to be harder to do. So for me personally, just as an example, this was always one of those things on my list. Yeah, I'm gonna start taking Fridays off. And so this was several years ago, and we had in my house where we lived, we had like a little den area, and I was always saying to my wife, I was like, hey, let me turn this into a home office. Let's move the piano, silly piano, move the piano and whatever out. Let me turn this into my office, because I'm going to start working from home, and this will be my office on Fridays. I'm going to work from home on Fridays. And so finally she said this, tell you what, when you work from home 4 Fridays in a row, I'll let you turn this into a home office. It took me like a year to get to 4 Fridays in a row, because we always have to go in, right? There's always something that comes up. But finally, I got to take the piano out and I got to turn it into a little home office, and it still was kind of hit and miss. But I started taking half days working at home on Fridays. And then I made it all day every Friday. And then I started taking a half day on Thursday, and I added it to it. Then I added an all day Thursday. So guys, I've gotten like pretty disciplined at this. So like right now, in all seriousness, don't tell anybody in my office, I go to my office like 1 day a week. That's it. Now, when I'm home, I'm still working. I'm not like just sitting around in my jammies drinking wine all day, but it's pretty good, because this allows me then to focus on the important things, to pay attention to opportunities, because I can get much more done here. So CEO of You Incorporated, you've got to take a little bit of time off for yourself there. Okay, next slide, please. Why? Here's our why question. Why do you want your business to grow? My guess is most of you do want your business to grow. But let me tell you about a conversation I had 6 months ago with a pretty successful real estate investor and real estate salesperson. And we were talking about growth. And he's like, oh man, I'm so pressured to grow. I need to grow 20% this next year. And I am not hitting that goal. And he was stressed to the max. And so I asked him this question. I was like, well, why exactly do you want your business to grow? Now, first he looked at me like I was an idiot. Like, well, Mark, what a stupid question. Because if we're not moving forward, we're going backwards. If we're not growing, we're shrinking. You can't be stagnant, right? That's the go-to answer for all of us. And so I said, oh, okay. I said, well, like, what do you want your business to look like? What do you want your life to look like? Remember, you're the CEO of You Incorporated. Right? What do you want that to look like? And he started talking about, well, I want to have more time to travel. I want to be able to do this over there. And his income was fine. Like, it's not like he needed more money. He just wanted to grow, because we all have to grow. So we entered this long dialogue about that. Fast forward a couple days later, he calls me back and he goes, Mark, I've had an epiphany. It's a big word. You can look it up later like I had to do. Had an epiphany. Mark, my epiphany is I don't need to grow. And as a matter of fact, I don't think I want to grow. I've got what I've got, but it's good enough to generate what I want out of life. And I need to do some sales, and I'm going to do some sales, but I can actually do a few less and still get the other things I want, because it's not all about growing the business. Sometimes we can just improve the business without growing it and make more money that way. But growth is not always the answer, guys. I mean, the word growth has become this like untouchable idol that we put up, and how much are you going to grow this year? What's your growth rate going to be? What's your plan for growth? And I really I think that's driven by marketing companies because they want our dollars. They want our hard-earned dollars because they tell us if we're not growing, we're going backwards. And I understand the concept there, right? I mean, we need to be improving. I totally get that. But if we become so growth focused that it starts hurting the other parts of you incorporated, that's not a good thing at all. All right, next slide, please. Next slide. Last question, our last question here. How will you measure success? Now, this is a great question for your company, isn't it? So let's come full circle back to my buddy that hired the CEO. One of the first questions a high energy, high efficient CEO will ask is, hey, for our company, how are we going to measure success? Now, maybe we'll measure success in dollars. Maybe we'll measure success in new clients. Maybe we'll measure success in Google reviews. Like, there's a lot of different ways you can measure success. So how will you, and this is I don't have an answer for you, but this is a question you need to answer for yourself. How are you going to measure the success of you incorporated? And it shouldn't just be a few more dollars. It shouldn't just be a few more sales transactions. That's a part of it. That's a necessary element of you incorporated, but it's not the only element of you incorporated. We've got to get real clear on how we're going to measure success. It's probably going to be in a couple different ways. So we risk over focusing on one thing. If you only said, you know what, I'm going to get healthy this year. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to get physically healthy. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to eat better. I'm going to do 1,000 push-ups every morning and run 3 miles at night. That's how I want to measure success. Oh, okay, that's fine. And maybe you get really healthy, but those other elements of you incorporated may fall off the back if we're only doing that. So we probably want to have several touch points, several measuring sticks of you incorporated. And we've got to come back to those. We've got to hold ourselves accountable because CEOs do a great job of holding the company accountable. So next slide, and then we'll get out of here. You are the CEO of You Inc., whether you like it or not, and you can't fire yourself. That's the bad news. Bad news is you can't fire. You're as good as you got. You are the only CEO you can afford. Therefore, you have an obligation to You Incorporated to be a high effective CEO. And I really think that by kind of focusing on some of these things we're talking about and by asking yourselves some of these questions, you can take You Incorporated to another level of success. And it's not going to be easy. Do not misunderstand. Being a CEO for any of us that are, it's hard. It is hard. If it were easy, it wouldn't be called work. It's hard. It's going to be difficult. And who knows what surprises this year is going to bring. But that's what CEOs get paid the big bucks to do, folks. And you're getting paid that all the money that You Incorporated can afford to be this CEO. So as you step into this new year, I would encourage you to take some time periodically, ask yourselves these questions. Make sure you, as the CEO of You Incorporated, are moving forward in that position. Hey guys, that's all I got. I hope that is something that you find beneficial. If you want to pull up the next slide, that's my contact info for anybody that wants it. Feel free to reach out. Although if you tell me you're coming to Colorado and you want to meet for lunch, you know what slide you're going to get. You're going to get that note template. But guys, I wish you a lot of success. I appreciate it. Hopefully we can all meet in person at some point in time. But Charlie, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great presentation, Mark. Always moving forward powerfully. Those are great words. If anybody's looking for an accountability partner, you can also hit me up at charlesbengal@remax.net. Mark is going to be back. Mark, you're going to be back on September 1st.
I am.
Right back here.
I said yes. I said yes to that, Charlie. I'm excited.
You did, yes. 6 formulas for working with real estate investors. So if you guys want more Marc Cunningham, be back here on September 1st. Our next speaker series guest is going to be Jackie Leavenworth. She's going to be on February 3rd, 6 Deadly Pricing Mistakes. We saw this presentation that Jackie did a few years ago, and it is on the money. So we look forward to seeing Jackie Leavenworth here on February 3rd. With that, Happy New Year, everybody. Mark, always good to see you. Take care. Stay safe, everybody. We'll see you all soon. Thanks.